Good morning and welcome to Around the Table with Smash. I hope you've got your coffee hot and ready. I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller, and during our last live stream session, Rabobank and Fonterra shared their forecast for the dairy industry. The upshot is next season's payout not going to be as wonderful as we hoped. So today we're going to find out how other farmers are going to manage their budgets during the downturn. We're going to hear from Richard Syme, Gaynor Tierney and Sam Owen. And of course, I want your questions as well. So make sure you join in the conversation by putting those questions in the comments section. A huge thank you to our sponsors who make it possible for us to meet through our field days and workshops, and of course online. Dairy NZ, Balance, DOSAN, FMG, Pioneer, Rabobank and Waikato Milking Systems. We love you guys. Thank you. Of course, don't forget, next week we're catching up with Jonathan and Joe Lee from Top Notch Calves. They'll be chatting with Waikato farmer Susie Woodward. So make sure you check your emails or the Facebook page for the link for next week. Right now, though, it's over to Richard Syme.
Good one. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Hey, welcome everybody, and well done for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend some time thinking about your farm business and particularly how you get through next season with financial planning. So just one sort of housekeeping point first up is on the right-hand side of your screen, you should have the option for putting in questions there. So just, and you'll be able to see what pops up. There's already one up there now from Philip Law, but just pop them up as you go through because the plan today is that I'll do a sort of 5-minute intro, a bit about the context of the environment we're operating in at the moment, and then talk a little bit about some general principles, just of farming and financial planning, I guess. Then I'm going to hand over to Sam. He'll talk for about 10 minutes just around the process that he goes through in terms of developing a budget. So some of the tools he uses, how he goes about it, and what are some of the other things that feed into his financial budget. And then over to Gaynor for around 10 minutes. She's going to talk about what she's doing on, in terms of budgets for her farm business this season, and also talk a little bit about the break-even milk price, which is a really useful and important tool. And then we'll have time for questions. So the questions that you put up on the side, we'll pick some of those off at the end and answer them as best we can between Sam, myself, and Gaynor. So yeah, so anyway, welcome and well done for taking some time out to join us. So the sort of three sort of introductory things. So first one I think is, definitely is, have a positive mindset. Have an approach to this next season of glass half full. So I guess an analogy to think about is that perhaps like sailing. We're just heading into some rougher seas. We're not heading into a cyclone. The payout is not going from 840 to 440 or to 390. So we just got to make some adjustments. We just need to trim the sails. So and while the adjusting your budgets or having a look at and pulling a budget together might not be the first thing you want to do when you come out of level one, it can actually be a really useful process. And just spending time with yourself or your partner or the other key people in your business, talking and thinking about your business is really useful and valuable time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just really setting the scene around context, I guess. And the context we're operating in is one of uncertainty. So it's definitely a time not to make rushed decisions. It's a time to be cautious. And we're seeing that uncertainty being reflected in the opening milk price from all the dairy companies. So, and I guess it's important to remember that for the dairy companies, they're forecasting what they think they're going to earn on the milk we produce this coming season, but they won't be selling. They probably got very little of it sold through now, and so it's not till probably 6 or 7 months time, or slightly longer, when they have a good sense of what they're earning and what they're likely to earn for the balance of the milk that we produce. So therefore, I think it's sensible and prudent to budget at the lower end of the milk price range that's been perhaps set up, but indicated by Fonterra. In our own business, we're doing 2 budgets. So we're running a budget at $5.80, and that's sort of our plan through to the end of December. And then we've got a second budget in there at $6.50, and that's really the difference in there is some things that we would do in autumn, primarily around development and capital FERT. And so we're sort of plan to run the season in 2 halves, really. So that's the second thing, just sort of setting the context. Prudent to budget at the lower end initially, particularly anyway. And the third thing I wanted to talk about was just some general principles, I guess, around running your farm business. So that I've got 3 points on that. First one is that cash or access to cash is critical. And so the process of doing a budget and planning out how the season's going to run financially gives you some knowledge. And from there, you can work out whether you've got a cash deficit at times of the year that you need to fill, or whether you've got enough in terms of reserves that you can draw on. For a lot of people, that you'll need some funding. So talk to your bank or accountant, get help, and involve, particularly your bank and accountant, I guess, involve them early. And often, you can hunt out some free advice. Your bank manager doesn't charge you for turning up and tapping into his knowledge, or running him through some scenarios that you're working through. You might find other neighbouring farmers who are really good financially that are happy to share some knowledge with you. So first thing, access to cash is critical. So do a budget. You know what your gap is, and talk to the bank if you need financing early. Second point is spend some time thinking, I guess, critically about your farm management and what you're good at and what you need to do better, because doing the basics really well around farm management is the key to good financial results. Financial results are just an outcome of doing a bunch of things really well. So whether it's around your people management, your pasture management, how you set up and manage your animals through calving, or how you make sure you're environmentally compliant, have a critical think and just spend a bit of time thinking about your farm management and what you can do to lift up to the next level, because it's those things that will end up in producing a good financial result. And my final point, instead of general principles, is just make sure you spend time on yourself. So there's no way, whether it's in business or in sport, that you can perform at your best unless you're physically strong and mentally healthy. So if you're not feeling like you're at your peak, heading into this next season, then seek out some help, talk to others, share it with your partner or with your friends, and just, I guess, make sure you spend time on yourself so that you do go into the season, ready to perform very well. So that was it for me in terms of just some introductory comments. So we'll now hand over to Sam, and Sam's going to take us through just the process that he goes through for budgeting in his own business. So over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Richard. I'm Sam Owen. In partnership with my wife, we share milk 245 cows at Eureka. We've been share milking for 5 years now. Really kind of taken up budgeting as a serious topic on farm for the last 4 to 5, thanks to enrolling in primary ATO and taking the bull by the horns and really playing around with the figures and learning what the figures mean to my business and our business, and have really teed up a good relationship with our new accountants, and taken on board Xero for a lot more live budgeting. And I find it just easier to keep track of things instead of being hit with it on the 20th of the month or when those big bills arrive, and just cash flow monitoring. Going back to what Richard said, cash flow is key, and having cash in the bank gives you a lot more options. So I'll just crack into it. I'm probably just going to cover off what I look for to build a budget before I actually start documenting and seeing whether we're in the red or the black and what we need to do. So I'll crack on. Obviously, if you've done a budget before, or you've already been self-employed for more than 1 year, you have last year's books. They're a good starting point. they're good to go through and get a pen out or a pencil and start crossing things out, or move things along, or reasoning with why those costs were what they were. Obviously, we don't want a drought again next year, but bought in feed, stock values, bits and pieces like that will change. And obviously COVID and dealing with it, and dealing with the fallout moving forward is obviously the key with the payout the way it is. So I actually run other budgets that key into my financial budget, and possibly most of us do. We just probably don't realize it. So the number one for me is the feed budget. If you're not at cover, or you don't have the feed on demand that you need to get through the season, that is going to be a large cost to your financial budget from the word go. So making sure you're at a feed budget level that you can see where your deficits and your shortfalls are, or your surpluses, and feeding that into your financial budget is key. I find you update your feed budget more often than you do your financial budget, which is probably not the PC way to do it, but once you've done a farm walk each week or each period, you update your feed budget. That should feed back in your financial budget, because you know what you're going to be expected to cost out on fert or feed, or culls going off, or stock needing to go off. Other ones, nutrient budgets. I see we've got a question here, non-negotiables from Lisa, fert and staff. Yeah, I probably agree with that. Fert and staff are key, and also time off. Going back to what Richard said, you can't run efficiently if you're empty. You've got nothing left in the tank, and it's up to you where you want to spend that money once you have that time off. But even if it's just driving to the beach each day and going for a beach walk for a weekend just to get the mind straight, that's key. I had an experience with it this year where I'd taken some time off, but my head wasn't in the right place, and I managed to drop a tractor bucket on my 2 fingers and cost me a month out of the game. Stock budget, what stock you've got on hand, what you need to have on hand if you've got a share milking contract, or what the banks and the accountants have on their books. And even to a small point, what's on minders' books, because you do get charged per animal, and if you can trim out some of the fat out of there, it can save you a small amount in the long term. So once I've got some of those things together, I throw them together. I use the Dairy NZ annual cash monthly budget, annual budget, and then you can play around with the sensitivity analysis, bits and pieces. It's quite straightforward. If you've never done it before, just start off with a personal budget, move along to an annual budget, then step up. Like I say, if you want to really get into the depths of it, there's some good primary ITO tutors out there, and good courses on primary ITO to really teach you how to do those things. And some of the things I use to peer review it are my accountant. I have some good people out there that I use as mentors, and I get them to just have a quick cast their eye over it. I mean, everybody's budget is different. The different farms, different systems, different cows, different priorities. Just like Lisa's question, people's priorities might be feed and animal health. No one's going to criticize you for it, but it's different focus. So when you've got those things together, you really want to try and lock in what you can. If you're like me, I like to know exactly what my PK is going to cost next year. I exactly kind of want to know if I can get a quote on some shed chemicals, I can put that in there, and it's more of a fixed cost. There's less variables they have to contend with for the rest of the year. There's enough variables in the dairy farming system as there is. I mean, weather alone can, as we've seen this year, can cause massive upset. So trying to fix as much as I can. And a lot of people got stung with the palm kernel market this year. For me, I peer review through Dairy Base as well. Although it is looking in the rearview mirror, you can calibrate and look at what other people are doing in your region. Same farm systems, share milkers, for instance, lower order share milkers, farm owners with staff, farm owners with contract milkers in place. It's a really helpful tool. And I know other companies such as Headlands and stuff operate Red Sky, which are just as key. But since I've picked up Zero and I'm starting to get my my hands dirty with Figured as well. That's also a great tool that you've got in the palm of your hand on your cell phone, on your computer at home. So some things I probably add in to my budget once I've got those, animal health, wages, bits and pieces. I add in a bit of a contingency at the bottom because I've learned firsthand, no pun intended, have some reserve, because if, for instance, you fall ill, you get sick, or one of your staff members gets sick and you have to replace them in a hurry, you're not probably going to get them for the same price as you were paying in the first place. And those can save you a lot of drama, even if it's just a couple of $1,000s to set aside for a massive a bike blowing up or anything like that in the short term. It can save you a lot of worries if you budget for it in the first place, because no one wants to be trying to find money for a new bike or a repair in the middle of July. But if you've got it there and it's sitting in the background, it's there for a rainy day. I think also we've got to remember now, from next month onwards, Fonterra will be paying on the 15th of the month instead of the 20th, which will all give us a little bit of a overdraft holiday before we are made to pay our bills, which everybody hates, but we all have to work towards. And I also use the payment predictor on the Fonterra website. Now, if you're a contract milker or lower to share milker, you may not have access to that, but it is a key tool to outlaying what you expect production to be. And if you're a new share milker going on to a farm or a new farm owner, sometimes you can see the historic track of the production. So you can say, up till Christmas, pretty solid, but after Christmas, possibly we may have to look at something to fill those holes so we can keep a stable cash flow coming through. Also, being flexible in that budget, like Richard mentioned, looking at adjusting it. We get regular updates now from Miles and the team at Fonterra on what the payout range will be, and operating maybe 2 or 3 budgets that look exactly the same but have a different payout figure at the top always strikes home where you need to be sitting and what needs to change. Other tools that are out there to really to hedge your bets or to help you out, the stock finance companies now are coming to the market with some decent finance deals around kind of what you can do with your bull payments, but you can work out some stock payment issues. And even though they're the big bad bear, the AID are coming to the party at the moment with income equalization for the year, which we are using to spread our tax, because on a 720 payout, we were probably more fortunate than others where we got the rain when we needed to. And looking at next year with a $566 payout, it's pretty obvious to us we're probably hopefully going to be paying less tax, so we can equal that out to make it a little less bumpy this year. And inquire with the IID, because there were holidays on payment dates for our GST and also for your provisional tax as well. And they are at a lot lower interest than what you could probably scrounge out of the bank at the moment. So that's some of the things we look at. Also, you can look at contracting fuel. Have a search around, get quotes. It was a perfect time during lockdown. Possibly should have sputtered it out to just ring your power company, ring your feed company, ring your detergent reps and say, could you sharpen a pencil on this, that, and the other? We're really, really happy with the product, but there's other players in the marketplace that are footing it with you. So we would like to, and we want to show our loyalty. We've been with you for X amount of years. Could you come to the party with something else? So from my point of view, that's kind of what we're looking at. And also, it probably goes without saying, having those meetings with your staff regularly, updating them on what the financial situation is on farm. There's no use grumbling and growing over payout, grumbling and growing over costs if your farm team is not up with the play. And I don't just mean your 2 ICs, your farm assistants. I also mean your accountants, your bank managers, even your stock agents, and saying, listen, I'm probably going to have to get my culls away earlier this year because I'm going to have to look at paying tax, or I want to use that to fund my summer feeds, or even to the other way is I'm going to carry my cows for a bit longer and try and milk on. So that's kind of what I look at before I put it all onto a piece of paper. And hopefully you got some questions for me, or hopefully I've covered off, some of the things that you might not have thought of, or you've already thought of, and you've just fallen asleep and gone and made yourself a cup of tea for the next 10 minutes. So I'll hand over back to Richard. And any questions, I'm willing to try and pick up and nut them out for you. Cheers.
Good one. No, thanks, Sam. So, and for those of you that you can all see us, I assume, I hope, but we can't see you. So it's a little bit different than some of the Zoom meetings where you can see a bunch of screens on face. So it's not quite the same when we can't see you all. But hey, thanks, Sam. I think the key, just I guess summarising some key points that I picked up from there. So the starting point using last year's actuals is a really good starting point. Other things that feed in, use dairy base. It's useful for benchmarking. If you've got it, use your feed budget because that will provide some information. Peer review is a great idea, just to get others' insights. Keeping them some slack or a bit of buffer in there is really good, because there's no point in doing a budget that's going to be unachievable, because you'll be found, the bank will find out, or whoever will find out. So you want to have something, and it's a good sense of achievement when you're achieving your budget. It always feels a bit flat if you're struggling to meet budget. So keep some slack and buffer in there, as I thought was a really good point. Getting quotes and asking for quotes is a great idea, because so often we go in and just accept the price that we're charged, or we don't ask and people turn up on farm to do something and we get a bit of a surprise when the bill comes in. So that was really good. And the point about sharing your fun, I guess the budget or the fun, how the farm's looking this season with the team is another good point. So thanks, Sam.
Yeah,
hey, I realised.
So just butt in there, just with that quote scheme, the biggest kind of back of the envelope stuff we do as a farming community is usually field days. Now, field days is there in the background online. So I think you've really got to tap your reps and people on the shoulder this year and say, hey, listen, field is not there. You're usually running a special. What can we squeeze out of you this year as a bit of a bonus? And just keep those relationships up too, just a phone call a month. So that's my little bit, and I'll hand over back to you, Richard.
Good. Yeah. No, thanks, Sam. Right. So Gaynor, hand it over to you. So take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Sam. Sam, you covered off a huge amount. So I've probably got a little bit less to cover off now. So that's great. So my name's Gaynor Tierney. We have just finished a large share milking job in the North Waikato. We were running that in conjunction with a farm that we owned. So we've taken the big step this year to stop share milking and just go and run our own farm on a once-a-day milking system. We went down the well-being, change of life, the whole thing, spend more time with the kids' roads, having share milked for over 15 years, head down, bum up. So that's where we're at. So actually, from a budgeting perspective, we've completely had to start again. And so it's a whole new concept for me in particular, re-budgeting for a very new farm system and pretty much taking a very large hit in income from milk income. So it's really good because it's re-challenged me to look at where exactly my costs need to lie in the business and what our non-negotiables are, and that will carry all the way through our farming philosophies. And under a once-a-day system, how do we actually look at costs and what is actually going to be effective and what's not going to be possible running those kind of systems. So we've ended up starting from scratch. So to do that, bearing in mind, back in kind of March, there were already indicators that the milk price was potentially going to come under a little bit of pressure. And off the back of that, from March, I decided, well, what is it I can do looking into next year's budgets to enable me to do, rather than do a whole annual budget straight away, to say, what kind of milk price do we need based on our new farm system and the property we're going to? What kind of milk price do we need to ensure that our business maintains profitability and success at whatever that milk price might be? So we've just got, can everyone see that? There's a screen that's come up. You might need to zoom it in a bit, but hopefully it's pretty good. I might just touch it up a fraction. Okay, so what I did is, it's called a break-even milk price. It's a tool that's available on the Dairy NZ website. And so it just gives you a very, very quick overview of, once you put your numbers in behind this, what kind of milk price do I need to ensure that I can run the system that I want. And from that point, I then... Yeah?
So just on the screen, you've got the quick cash budget. Are you meaning that, are you intending to have up the break-even milk price calculator, or?
That is it. It's down here.
Cool. Okay, good one.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, it's just the way it's probably cut off on screen. So that's what it is, Richard. So it just quickly brings you down to a very quick cash budget, and then at the bottom you get this milk price calculation.
Yes.
I might be using a slightly older Excel version of it. It is up and running online now, and it is available on the Dairy NZ website if you just put it in the search engine, break-even milk price. So look, smaller farm, it's only 67 effective hectares, and we're aiming to do about 70,000 milk solids, which is just over 1,000 milk solids a hectare on a once-a-day system. Again, it's all pie in the sky stuff, because that's what we're hoping to do, but it will depend how the cows and everything treat going on to once a day. So we've got a milk income, we've got some livestock sales. So for any system that you're running, you can very quickly put this in. Any other dairy income that you might have. So for some of you, you might have a whole lot of other dairy income comes into your business around rentals, leasing out stock, particularly if you're share milkers and you've got some stock on lease. Some people rent a little bit of land out for maize and things like that, so you can put that in there. Then that's any other income that might come into the business. So you get down to a point that you've got a total income, and then you start firing into your farm working expenses, or what I should say is expenses across the board. So bearing in mind, I've done this for my system, and again, every business is going to be quite different. So our farm working expenses, we've always run a level 2 system on both of our farms. So we're confident that we'll be able to run a $3 milk solid farm working expenses on our farm that we're going to, and the farm that we own. However, a bit like Sam was saying, you've got to put some contingency money in there. So that's what we've done. So I've just put in about $10,000 worth of other expenses that may come into play with the farm working expenses. So tie that in there. And then we've got interest on borrowing that we need to pay. Our tax, we've just calculated that. That's just a very crude calculation until I actually sit down with the accountant with our annual budget, which will be in the next week or two, to start working out provisional tax. But that's based off kind of 20-25% of what we perceive our profit to be. Drawings are up there. And then because we're on we're on our farm that we haven't farmed on for the last 8 years, we've got quite a bit of capital that we actually need to do. So look, usually in a lower milk income year, a lot of capital gets put to the side, and farmers, that becomes a nice to have, but not an absolute have to have. For us, there's quite a bit of stuff that we need to do to get that farm up to play, so that in the next year or two, everything's running along kosher. So a lot of that would be around fences, doing up raceways, all of those things that lots of farm owners have in the back of their mind that they need to do. And for us, it's a must to have this year. So, and there's a little bit of extra machinery that we need to buy in. So I've actually put quite a large number in there at 50,000. So that is potentially an area that we can negotiate around going further if we don't get the milk price that we're hoping for. And then we've got a bit of debt. So one of our non-negotiables, there are a number of them, but one of them is every year we want to pay down debt. So that debt at the moment is about 15% of what we are currently borrowed. So that's just something that we as a business want to do every year. So that's gone in there as well. So basically it gets us down to a total expenses, and then it gives us a cash surplus, deficit, etc. By the time that you've actually taken your gross income and taken out your expenses. And it gets you down to this figure at the bottom, which is break-even milk price. So you've got a gross figure there, but if I actually highlight over here, For us, so it's $5.86. So bearing in mind we've put quite a bit in there for capital infrastructure that needs to be added to the business. So if that wasn't in there, that would jump down quite a bit. So based off that kind of break-even milk price at $5.86, we took the opportunity, which is the first time we've ever done it, of locking in some of our milk price. And that's what we did at, I think it's $6.40 something, I can't quite remember. So we just wanted to take a little bit of the risk out of the milk price. And it's a tool available by the dairy company. Some people choose to take it up for a variance of reasons. Ours was specifically that we needed a reasonable guaranteed milk price to be able to do all the things that we want to do on the farm. So we took a punt, and that's what we've done. So we've locked in some of the milk price. Obviously, you can only lock in up to 50%. We actually locked in about a third of our milk. And so that's given us some guarantee around our milk income. So look, obviously the bottom end of the milk price potentially that Fonterra has put out there is $5.40, I think. So that for a lot of farmers at $5.40, depending on what their break-even milk price will be, will mean that they've got to start looking at areas that they think that they've got some flexibility in. And I think Sam went into a huge amount of detail about places you can look, people that you can talk to. We all talk about doing these things, about talking to agents, talking to different businesses that supply us, about trying to get better deals. And lots of us don't actually do it. But certainly when the pressure comes on a little bit, then it's really, really important that we do. And we look at those areas that we can actually potentially save some costs. So there was quite a few of non-negotiables in there for us. So that's why we got down to $5.86. So off the back of that, I'm going to come out of that. So off the back of that, some of our what I tended to do after that is I'm just putting an annual budget together now for our farm owner, for our accountant, and we're going to sit down because we sold quite a few of our cows, leaving the biggest share milking job, and just bought a proportion of them to our new property. We've also bought a dry stock farm, so that's probably not the thing to do if you want to make any profit. But anyway, that was part of the lifestyle change. So we've so we've done our annual budget. So we've actually got a reasonably large tax bill carrying over from the cows. So I'm very conscious that we've got a large tax bill coming through. And obviously, when you're doing a lot lower milk solids, I haven't even included that in that break-even milk price. And the reason for that is just the way that we have spoken with our accountant. There's a number of tax avenues that we can go down to spread that cost of the tax out during the course of the year. And obviously, we've also got a reasonably good retrospective payment coming through from the dairy company. And between the couple of farms that we've running, we've got a good retrospective payment coming through. So that's going to soften the blow for us. But to be fair, most of that's going to be sucked up paying tax for our cows and the tail end of last year. So it's just really for us about being very conscious about where we're going, where we're heading. I think Richard made a comment earlier on, but just really reiterating it, that look, for most people with the retrospective payment coming through, that's not going to apply for a new share milker, but most of us, that will soften the blow for our cash flows up till about Christmas. And that means post-Christmas, and we're going to have a lot more bearing on what milk price is potentially looking like. I think we might all know where the world is going by that point. That may then make quite a deciding factor about what post-Christmas looks like. And so assuming that we have an amazing, fabulous Waikato summer, or a Northland or Taranaki, wherever you may be in the country, assuming we don't have a bad drought, then people have got a bit of flexibility about how they then choose to feed their cows and run their systems after Christmas. So one of those things about feeding cows in particular is about we still stand by the good old, and people can laugh at this and question it. I'm more than happy to take questions on it, but the good old 5% of payout when you're looking at purchase feed. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. But it's a very, very kind of simple, crude way of calculating out how much am I able to pay for purchase feed outside of a drought or severe deficit situations. I completely accept if there's an animal welfare issue or we've got incredibly bad weather. Obviously, that goes out the window because it's really important that you achieve all of those targets for your animals to be well fed. But we still use 5%. So if we're looking at a $5.50 payout, then we'll just do it based off kind of $27.50 for purchase feed. So at the moment, that wouldn't give you many options for purchasing and feed. So obviously, most farmers, like Sam was saying, some people were able to lock in palm kernel prices on some of these one-day sales that they've been having. But if you're caught at the tail end of the season trying to book in palm kernel at over $400 and we're only getting the $5.50 payout, you'd really have to question what's the profitability of doing that. And what I would say is if you struggle with the thinking behind how purchase feed comes into the system, how is it effective, how can I use it most profitably, go and talk to someone. Look, we've been doing this stuff for years and years on our home properties, but we still always talk to other farmers. We talk to consultants, whether we're at discussion group or wherever we are, talk about, look, I'm thinking of potentially buying this in as a feed. This is a lower payout. Is this a good option, or are there some other things that I can potentially look at? So feed for us, it doesn't form a large part of our system outside of pasture. However, when we need it, we're prepared to do the calculations and work out where we need it and where does it fit in our system. So it's really important. Just another couple of things around the non-negotiables. Yes, Richard.
I might cut you off there.
That's cool.
Just so we can get to some of the questions, if that's okay. But
yeah.
Thanks a lot. That was really useful. Particularly, I guess, a couple of sort of 4 key things I've noted down. The break-even milk prices are really useful analysis as a starting point, and I guess from there you can work out whether you need to make significant changes to your farm business for the season coming up. And I guess for you, gain all that fed into the reasons or knowledge and the reasons why you took some fixed milk price, just to make sure you can lock in at a price where you're pretty certain you can do that capital expenditure on your farm. The point about getting some advice from your accountant, particularly around tax or income equalisation, is really relevant because they are the people with the knowledge. So if it's something technical, go to the right people for that advice. And just the final point about just asking lots of questions and seeking out information and knowledge is brilliant, because with farming there's no one, it's not a recipe, is it? Everyone does it slightly differently, and I think you can always pick up some great things that you can pull back to your own business from talking to others or from discussion groups. So we might jump into some of the questions now, Sam and Gain. Also, there was one earlier on I saw just about what are your non-negotiables, and I think someone had suggested, Lisa had suggested that hers were FERT and staff. So I'll pick it up and then perhaps hand over to you, Gaynor, and Sam, if there's anything else you want to add coming at the end. So for me, I'd probably tend to agree on those two. I think the way I approach it is, I think if I've got to prioritise, I think about what are the things that affect this season's production. So with FERT, so nitrogen at the right time, I definitely wouldn't pull that out of the budget. But capital FERT, if you've done a nutrient budget and and soil tests, then there can be options to pull that out in some years and just mine, down phosphate levels, or just defer FERT. Around people, I think, certainly you need enough. I think there's always it's about getting the best out of the team, isn't it? So you probably can pay the same amount of money to a couple of different people, but get completely different results in terms of their performance on the farm, and that can impact financials. So perhaps around the people, certainly need enough, but a lot of it can be around how you manage them to get the best out of them. So Gaynor, for you, are there any non-negotiables you have, or what are there one or two non-negotiables you have when you pull together a budget?
Yep. So I was just look, yeah, absolutely the staff one, well-being of people, crucial. We've all seen situations where payouts drop, so people get rid of a staff member, and then everyone's soaking up the extra hours and everything else. It's just not sustainable. So it's important to look at how you're staffing your business and making sure it's the right for the system that you're running in, because no one wants to end up in a situation that just because things haven't gone well with the milk payout, we're all then pushing the farm to the extent that it's putting everyone under pressure. So for us, around the fertilizer one, what I would say is, and I look back to some of the incredibly low payout years that we've had, yes, there's certainly opportunity for businesses or for your farm to mine what's sitting in the soil. The crucial thing is to have done recent soil tests. We got burnt quite a few years ago. Probably hadn't soil tested for a while, but we kind of winged our way thinking that we could, and no, there's no doubt about it. We saved plenty of money on fertilizer. We think we then saw an impact for that a couple of years later, just with some of the growing conditions on the farm. So hopefully we've corrected that over the last couple of years of good payouts. And this is the farm we're on now. So so if you're going to look at potentially reducing fertilizer, and there's no reason you can't, then just make sure you've got a really up-to-date, decent soil testing done. So at least you can look at it and say, actually, half of the farm, I can probably change the way I'm fertilizing the farm, because half of it's actually where I want it to be. So I've got a little bit of play. And the other half, or another couple of paddocks, depending on soil types, I actually need to keep doing what I'm doing. So that will vary hugely from farm to farm. One of the other things for us outside of the purchase feed one is actually just reevaluating some of our animal health expenses. We like to do a zero budget when things come under a bit of pressure, and actually work out, okay, we're going to start our budget from scratch. What do we actually need to ensure that these animals get what they need from an animal health requirement level? So we just start at zero, and we just keep adding to that till we get up to a certain amount, a certain dollar value, pull $100 out of the hat. And then we'll go out and again, ask lots of farmers, talk to different people, and particularly those farmers that are doing a really good job around animal health. Talk to your vets and say, look, I would like to bring this down nearer $80 or $70 or whatever, because I know that there's farmers doing that. So what is it in here that I can potentially play around with that's not going to impact hugely on my animal health? And it's become a nice to have, but it's not a must to have. So and they're only little savings, but you add them up, and little savings add up to thousands of dollars.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Gaynor. Sam, have you got anything to add to that?
Not really. I covered off a little bit of it when I did my spiel. Like you say, staff, from a share milker point of view, all my values in the herd. So I tend not to cut back on herd testing. I still try and do my 3 or 4 just because it props up my BWPW if I ever need to sell stock. It is a cost that is probably a lot of people would drop out, but I would rather search out other little factors first before I drop that out. And also run the feed type of things, just seeing what's out there that you can maybe drop in or drop out at a lower value. So, maize is slowly creeping up. I think someone's referred to it. 34, 35 cents I've heard this year. Are you better investing that in palm kernel? Kind of does a similar job in the way of weight gain, extending lactation, etc. Just things like that, to be honest.
Good one. Okay, no, that sounds good. And someone, I think it was Louise, might have had just a question built into her statement just about animal health has been high for her for a few years. And so, yeah, the point, Gaynor, about going and talking to the vet, I think is a really good one. The other, and her question was, how could she, hopefully they're going to get it down. I'd say the other one is just trying to understand what the cause of the cost blowout and animal health is. So, because if you understand that, then you know what to target. So, the input from the vets is a really good one on that. And Dairy Base as well has good benchmarking data around what others running your same system are paying on probably look at that on a per cow basis, what they're paying per cow for animal health costs or breeding costs.
Yeah, well, from our point of view, for animal health, we try and look at the short term and the long term. So, I mean, if we've got to put a copper bullet in, for instance, at the moment, or jab, what are the outcomes and what are the cost over the period? So, I mean, a copper bullet could last 6 to 10 weeks, where a jab might last, you might have to give them 2 jabs over the course of 4 weeks apart. What is the cost benefit of each? And you've got to kind of factor in the labor side of things too, because if you're copper bulleting, it's a lot more labor intensive than just jabbing a cow for copper. So those factored in, although there's an animal health side, there's also a staffing side to that as well. So just looking at that from a point of view of animal health, and also going back to the capital FERT thing, some of those animal health things can be built into the capital FERT, and sometimes it's a cheaper way of doing it. I know selenium is one of those things, and also you can do some cobalt as well, which is marginal some years, but it's worth looking at a different kind of avenue to feed into the animal health budget.
Good one. There was a question around just frequency of updating your budget as you go through the season. So, Gaynor, in a typical, what would you expect this season coming up? How frequently would you be looking at it and updating, based on how you're tracking for the season?
So, so I just do my GST. So to be fair, and it doesn't matter if it's your accountant doing your GST or yourself. So I just update my budgets as I'm doing my GST. So plenty of times I'll be paying a whole lot of bills, then doing my GST, and then I'll suddenly question my husband on a payment that's been slipped through the die, and I'll be like, "Where's that come from?" And then I have to adjust the budget, and it's generally got 2 wheels and drives around the farm. So it's just, that's the easiest way for doing it for me. Just set my budget at the start of the year, and as I do my GST, change it as I go through the year. So otherwise, if lots of people do it bi-monthly, and that's absolutely fine. I think once you start pushing it out 3, 4, 5 months, as you all know, we're constantly getting updates on milk payouts, on feed costs, and everything else, and you can very quickly, particularly on farm, be thousands of dollars out on your predictions if you're leaving that reevaluation of your budget 4, 5, 6 months out.
Yeah, make a point.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that too.
Yeah.
So I kind of budget and do a lot of my feed analysis on Dairy NZ. So if I flick the pages open, I just kind of, when I've done a feed budget or updated my feed budget, I then transfer what I've learned from my feed budget into my budget. But a full update, I'd agree with Gaynor, GST payment with zero and everything, it's all in the mix. And I get regular reports from my accountant as well that says you're tracking beyond, or pull it back, or why is this so high in that month? GST payment month, and it depends when those things come on board. If you locked in your palm kernel price, you can then go back and just say, right, this is exactly what we're paying this year. So at the start of your budget, you may not have those figures. You might do a budget for the bank in April for the forthcoming season. You might go to field days. Usually you go to June, you've locked in your detergent, you locked in your palm kernel price. You might have signed a contract for whatever else, your power. You can then go and finalize those in your budget, and that gives you more clarity moving forward.
Yeah, what you're doing there, Sam, is you're fixing your variable costs, and that gives you a lot of power in the sense of it reduces your risk. And for lots of farmers, when you're potentially got some non-negotiables around what the bank wants paid back to them this year, and around both interest rates, but obviously for a lot of people principal, then they're fixed as well. So being able to fix in more costs to give you far more planning is hugely helpful. There's just a quick question that's come up there. Sorry, Richard, around is anyone looking to products that can be added to allow you to cut out feed by increasing feed conversion? Look, Richard, you might have a point on this, but my point to that would be anything that looks too good to be true generally is, and there is a lot of products out there that talk about increasing milk conversion, feed conversion efficiency by using them. They can, some of them are literally pour-ons, some of them are injections, some of them are feed supplements that go on the top of the feed that you're feeding. Again, with any of that, what I would say is do your homework, ask your farming peers, and ask around, because there's a lot of products like that out there. And when we are a little bit under pressure, farmers always like to, as we all do, look at things and go, actually, if I can use that and it's going to improve that feed efficiency, then I'll use it. But actually, yeah, there's quite a bit out of it that just doesn't work.
No, I echo that. The industry's got a huge amount of salesmen trying to sell us stuff, and so just be really. This is not the season to be willing to try something. At the best of times, I'm always skeptical, I guess, of any sort of stuff like that. I'd say if there's, I was being a bit cheeky, I guess, but if there was any one product that you could add to help improve the performance on farm, I did hear of someone who used to put a box of matches in the middle of each paddock, and when the staff went out to walk, I guess the staff had to go out and pull a match out of each box, and I guess going out and walking your pasture and assessing what cover you've got, looking at residuals, that would be the best investment you could make. And so if buying a box of matches helped you do that better, then that would be the only product I'd recommend, I think. We probably need to wrap it up. I'm just thinking
I had 20 seconds for that utilization, the feed conversion. I think more of an issue on farm is utilization more than trying to make it work harder by feeding out and going back to what Richard said around the farm management side of things, doing things right. So feeding out in a dry area, or maybe just pulling back on the maize in the wet times, because that will save you a lot more feed than the feed additives you can get, especially if you haven't got a feed pad or anything like that. So that would be my point. And just to cover off Michael's question quickly, no, I wouldn't really play around with my insurance too much, because insurance is one of those things, you don't want to offside them. I do look at my accounts each year and go, well, that quad's not worth $10,000, but I try not to devalue stuff too much, because if you have to replace it, you're out of pocket. And Murphy's Law is, as soon as you devalue something on paper so much, you've got to replace it, and you're out of pocket by more than what you were saving on insurance.
Yeah, no, great tips. I mean, we could keep going forever, because on the insurance you can look at what your excess is. That can lower your premiums a little bit. But yeah. Hey, look, I'm conscious of the time. We said it was going to be 45 minutes. We're gone for 50 minutes. So I think just in wrapping up for myself, hey, have a positive mindset. We've got a bit of rough weather. It's not a cyclone, so stay the course. Be positive. But be cautious. It's uncertain times, so be cautious until we get further through in the season. Make sure you know what your cash position is and talk to the bank early if you need funding. And just focus on doing the basics well, because doing the basics well will result in a good financial performance. And look after yourself. So if you're not at the top of your game and feeling positive, then it's really hard to do well on the farm and your farm business. So anyway, hey, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll hand back to you, Anne-Marie, just to wrap up. So thank you.
Some fantastic advice there, and lots of good tips too. I especially like the analogy that we're not in the cyclone, we're just experiencing a bit of rough weather. We can ride it out. And of course, looking after ourselves is so important as well. So thank you so much, Headlands consultant Richard Syme, Gaynor Tierney, and Sam Owen. We've really appreciated your time today. And to everyone who's asked questions, we hope that they were answered. And we appreciate your contribution to the conversation as well. Make sure you join us next week. We're going to be speaking with Jonathan and Joanne Lee from Top Notch Calves. They'll be chatting with Waikato farmer Susie Woodward, and they'll be talking about how they've designed and researched the nutrition and animal health strategies to get them through the calf rearing. So you might be able to pick up some tips there as well. And of course, a huge thanks to our sponsors again, Dairy NZ, Balance, Diosan, FMG, Pioneer, Rabobank, and Waikato Milking Systems. We'll catch you back next week, 10:30. Take a look at the emails and the Facebook for the live link. Have a fantastic week.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.